The rain that night didn't just fall. It felt like it was trying to erase the city, hammering against the pavement with a relentless, rhythmic violence that matched the pounding in Keisha's chest. She was 24, tired, and bone-deep lonely, the kind of exhaustion that settles into the marrow after 14 hours of being invisible. Working as a secretary at 24/7 Global Logistics wasn't just a job, it was a daily exercise in humiliation, a place where her diligence was treated as a doormat for others to wipe their ambition on. She adjusted her grip on her umbrella, which was fighting a losing battle against the wind, and hurried toward her rusted sedan parked 3 blocks away to avoid the parking fees she couldn't afford. That was when it happened. In her rush to avoid a deep puddle, she slipped. Her hips slammed into the side of a vehicle parked in the shadows, her bag's metal buckle dragging across the pristine, obsidian door with a loud screeching sound. Keisha froze. The sound was a jagged tear in the fabric of the night. She scrambled to her feet, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird, and looked at what she had done. It wasn't just a car. It was a beast, a sleek, black specialized import that looked like it cost more than her entire bloodline had earned in a century. A jagged white scar now marred its perfect paint. The street was empty. The rain was heavy. No cameras were visible in this blind spot. The easy thing, the smart thing, the survival thing would be to get in her car and drive away. No one would know. No one would ever suspect the shy, African-American secretary who barely spoke above a whisper. But Keisha couldn't move. Her grandmother's voice, a ghost of memory, whispered in her ear about integrity being what you do when no one is watching. Her hands shook violently, not from the cold, but from the terrifying realization of what she was about to do. She pulled a soggy notepad from her purse, the paper damp and fragile. With a trembling hand, she wrote, "I am so sorry. I slipped and scratched your car. I can't pay it all now, but I will pay every cent. Please call me." She signed her name and number, her handwriting jagged with fear. She slipped the note into a plastic sandwich bag she had saved for her lunch and tucked it under the wiper blade, pressing it down against the cold glass. She stared at it for 1 second, a death sentence for her savings, a confession of guilt in a world that rewarded liars, and then she ran. She ran to her car, locked the doors, and sat there hyperventilating, waiting for sirens, for angry men, for the universe to strike her down. She didn't see the figure standing 20 feet away in the shadows of the alley, a man flanked by 2 large bodyguards, watching her every move. She didn't see the way the man, whose suits cost more than her annual rent, tilted his head, intrigued by the girl who apologized to a monster's car in the pouring rain. She just drove away, tears hot on her cheeks, unaware that she had just left her name in the hands of the most dangerous man the city had never dared to speak of. The next morning, the office felt sharper, colder, as if the air conditioning was pumping pure anxiety into the room alongside the recycled air. Keisha sat at her desk, her eyes rimmed with red from a sleepless night, jumping every time the phone rang. Every trill of the landline sounded like a judgment. She expected the police. She expected a scream. She expected her life to be over. "You look like you saw a ghost, Keisha," a voice drawled from above. It was Felicity, the senior executive assistant and the architect of 90% of Keisha's daily misery. Felicity was beautiful in a way that felt weaponized, sharp smiles, expensive highlights, and eyes that scanned people for weaknesses to exploit. She leaned against Keisha's cubicle, holding a latte that she would inevitably claim was made wrong so she could send Keisha back out in the cold to replace it. Or maybe you just finally realized that wearing that cardigan 2 days in a row is a fashion crime. Felicity laughed, the sound brittle and performative, designed to make the other assistants chuckle nervously. They did. They always did. Keisha just looked down at her keyboard, her fingers hovering over a spreadsheet she had already checked 3 times. "I was just tired, Felicity," Keisha whispered, her voice barely carrying over the hum of the copier. "Tired? Honey, we're all tired. Some of us just handle it with grace." Felicity snapped, dropping a stack of unfiled reports on Keisha's desk. "Finish these by noon. And don't mess it up like you did the lunch order yesterday." Keisha swallowed the lump in her throat, nodding silently. This was her life. absorbing the venom of people who felt small and needed to make someone else feel smaller to compensate. She worked in silence, the dread of the car note sitting in her stomach like a stone. Why haven't they called? She wondered. Maybe the rain washed it away. Maybe they didn't care. But deep down, she knew that people who drove cars like that always cared. They cared about every scratch, every slight, every penny. Around 11 a.m., her personal cell phone buzzed in her pocket. The screen showed a private number. The room seemed to tilt. Her breath hitched. She stepped into the hallway, her hands trembling so hard she almost dropped the phone. "Hello?" she whispered, her voice shaking. There was silence on the other end for a long, agonizing beat. Then a man's voice, smooth, low, and terrifyingly calm, spoke. "Keisha," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. "You left a note on my vehicle." Keisha squeezed her eyes shut, leaning against the cold wall for support.
Yes.
"Yes, I did. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to. I have insurance. Well, not great insurance, but I can make payments. Please don't call the police." The man on the other end paused again. "I am not interested in the police," he said, the tone unreadable, carrying an edge of danger that made the hair on her arm stand up. "I am interested in accountability. Come to the address I just texted you. Tonight, 8 p.m. Do not be late." The line went dead before she could beg, before she could explain, leaving her standing in the fluorescent hallway with the dial tone humming like a flatline. The address led her to a part of the city where the streetlights worked, the sidewalks were clean, and the buildings scraped the sky like monuments to impossible wealth. Keisha stood outside the heavy glass doors of a private club, the kind of place that didn't have a sign, just a bouncer who looked like he could punch through a brick wall. She was wearing her best blazer, which was 3 years old and slightly frayed at the cuffs, and she felt like a child wearing a costume. When she gave her name, the bouncer's stony expression shifted, a flicker of recognition, or perhaps surprise, and he opened the door without a word. Inside, the air smelled of expensive scotch, leather, and silence. It was dark, lit only by amber recessed lighting. She was led to a back room, a private